So, I'm flying to New York City. Actually, that's not true. I'm flying to Newark, which is in New Jersey, for those who don't know. I'm flying in to go to the Green Day concert. It's been a lifelong dream of mine to go to Green Day. It's even better that it was in New York City. It was amazing. I'm flying there. My original flight plan was to go from from San Diego to Phoenix, Phoenix to Newark. And I wake up the morning of my flight, and my flight to Phoenix is canceled. I'm in San Diego. I'm like, great. I have to figure this out. I will figure it out, but I have to spend a lot of money to get a flight. I get my replacement flight. $300 later, I am at the airport, and I forget that I have a taser, a full-size taser in my carry-on bag. I almost get arrested. What I end up doing is having to throw it away in the airport, and it was very, very awkward. I am like, great, things are moving along, no more bad juju. I'm going to hop on this flight from Phoenix to Newark, no biggie. I land in Phoenix, my flight to Newark is canceled. They reschedule me to exactly 25 hours after the original flight. I'm like, great, I'm missing an entire day in New York, but whatever. You know what? I wasn't supposed to be there today, not a big deal. 25 hours later, I'm on the flight. Some things happen where my best friend who I'm traveling with, her knee pops out of place and is not did not pop back into place before we got on the flight. So we have to get one of those wheelchair accessibility people to like come and like push her through the airport because she's on crutches. We get on the flight. You know, we make it, we're happy, we're excited, we're taking this red eye, it's going to be okay, we're just going to like hop off the plane, we're going to get things going, juju going, we're going to get a Red Bull, we'll be fine. We get off the flight, we have a great first day. We go to the concert, it was amazing, you know, Billy Joe Armstrong, if you have the opportunity to go see Green Day, go see them, it was an amazing concert. The next day, after the concert, we're supposed to fly back out. So I'm like, oh shoot, my flight has been canceled because my original flight that I got when I first ordered the tickets was directly from Newark to Phoenix. But they rescheduled us. They rerouted us 2 months before we went to Newark to go from Newark to Charlotte to Phoenix. And I'm like, fuck, you know? There's a hurricane coming into Charlotte. So my flight from Newark to Charlotte gets canceled. And I'm like, okay, well, obviously the one out of Charlotte is also going to get canceled. So we need to get a new flight. I get a new flight. We're like, okay, it's totally fine. Our new flight is 2 hours after the original one. So I'm like, okay, we'll spend a couple extra hours. We'll do a couple extra things. No big deal. We do a couple extra things. We go see the Friends apartment in New York City. We go see Carrie Bradshaw's apartment. You know, typical New York things. And I then get to the airport, we go through security, I check my bag, which was extra bad because I had 18 pickles in my bag that I was very attached to. And I was like, the only reason why I'm checking my bag is United doesn't do, you know, carry-ons with your, like, you can't have a personal item and a carry-on. You have to choose. And I was like, I'd rather just have my purse. So then we're at the airport, we're sitting there, we get delayed twice. And then this flight gets canceled out of Newark. There are no flights out of Newark until Friday because of this fucking hurricane. And there's another storm coming into Newark. So we're screwed. We're fucked, you know? I'm like, I'm never getting off the East Coast. It's never going to happen. I'm going to have to live here for the rest of my life. I need to leave. I get on the phone with United. I'm like, get me anywhere out of here. I don't care if I have to drive to fucking Philadelphia. Get me out of here. So I'm on the flight. He's like, the only one that we have going into San Diego is out of Pittsburgh. And I was like, fuck it, I'll take it. So I take that flight. I'm like, okay, we got to go get a rental car. I don't even care about my bag at this point. It'll end up in San Diego at some point. I don't give a fuck. Get me out of the East Coast. I then get quoted $1,000 for the last rental car out of 12 rental car agencies in New York. I'm like, oh my God, I get quoted $1,000. I'm like, I don't care at this point. Get me out of here. I drive 6 hours, 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. the next morning. I get out of my rental car. We sprint through security. We make our flight. We fly out of Pittsburgh into Chicago to San Diego. I finally make it. I don't want to tell you about the rest of the drama. because it literally is awful and you won't even believe me. Like in Chicago, we were on the tarmac for 20 minutes after the flight was fully boarded, and he's like, we might have to cancel this flight because there's maintenance issues on this plane. I said, I don't care if I die. I would rather die than not get home, you know? I was so fucked. I was so screwed. I spent literally $2,000 more dollars than I was supposed to spend on this trip. But you know what? I made it home in one piece. I did it. We're okay.
And you saw the Green Bay Packers.
I saw the Green Bay Packers.
Naomi, when you started this anecdote, I was initially thinking, oh, she's going to be able to easily summarize it in 2 or 3 minutes, and that's the intro to our episode.
No.
But given the level of pathos and your commitment to fleshing out this story, I kind of think the entire episode now needs to be just us fetching about things and or updating people on our lives. Is this suddenly a Catchup and Guys episode?
There it is. Let's do it.
Welcome back to Why Will No One Date These Guys. It's probably because we've had this podcast for 3 years, and rather than coming up with consistent scripts and a long-term plan for what we're going to be covering, we just kind of wing it on a weekly basis. We just kind of have some stuff, ready to go in a revolver. We got a couple rounds ready to fire off at any time. One of them, I guess, is this episode. For the listeners, I do want to state, I had an episode planned out. We were going to discuss the book Intimate Matters, A History of Sexuality in America, and I was going to have all sorts of fun, cool anecdotes about, the weird sex stuff people used to do. But you know what? This feels like a lot more fun. There are times when we start our intros and we go, so... and I explain how I'm a bad cat owner, and everyone's like, ha, 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 Joel's a bad cat owner. He makes his cat so fat. And then there's times we open and we say, so, and Naomi just unloads a decade's worth of trauma compressed into the space of 5 calendar days. And yeah, there's obviously a difference between those. Who are you?
I'm Naomi Guy, and I also partly host this podcast when Joel isn't screaming about how bad of a cat parent he is, even though he's one of the best cat parents I know. To be fair, he's one of the only cat parents that I know, so let's be completely honest here. But I would like to say I do this podcast because I like spending time with my brothers, so I don't care what we talk about. I just like spending time with him every week. So let's get into the episode.
Well, I'd like to think that, that's true of a lot of groups. Like Green Day, they don't actually enjoy making lots of money and playing music. They just enjoy spending time with their friends, right?
That's literally the energy that I got, because they've been touring for 30 years now. And Billy Joe Armstrong, they're all in their 50s. They look old as fuck now, but it's so funny because they still prank each other and have a good time on stage. And it's either they're really good actors or they just genuinely enjoy each other's company after 30 plus years of friendship.
Wow. And I bet, the Green Bay Packers, they don't even like playing football. They just enjoy hanging out with the rest of their 250 to 350 pound friends, running around, throwing the old pigskin. Used to be they just do that after work some nights. But now it's a full-time job. And I'm sure they hate it. But you know what? It brings in the big bucks. So who's to say about their life choices? As much as I'd like to continue talking about Green Day and the Green Bay Packers, it just occurred to me, how old are the Jonas Brothers, and are they still touring?
Yeah, they are still touring. They're in their 30s, at mid 30s now. Because they started touring where they were 17, I think. That's when then they had a show. Yeah, and then now they're all married, or some of them are divorced now, and they have kids, and yeah, it's a whole thing.
Yeah. So we could, sit back and figure out how we're going to structure this episode. There's a couple things off the top of my head I can think of talking about. But before we do any of that, Naomi, I do have a drink to try. This one's a bit of a pull. It was something I found in an international market. It is Around the World Aqua Gin Deep Ocean Sparkling Water Italian Style Grape. So it's 5 separate things.
Yeah.
Collagen in it. So it's grape flavored sparkling water that smells very strongly like grape juice. And then you look at the back, and the first ingredient is carbonated water, followed by apple juice, followed by grape ferment liquid, not grape juice, followed by vinegar, followed by fish collagen. Oh god, this isn't even vegan. Jesus, what the hell?
What is Wait, hold on. What did you say the third ingredient was? Fermented grape?
Fermented grape liquid. And
So
then
you're
at the very
just
bottom,
drinking
after like
wine.
purple carrot juice and artificial flavors, you get deep ocean mineral concentrate.
You're just drinking wine at that point. If you're drinking fermented grapes, it's just wine.
So, as someone who's like a vegetarian, partially for like ethical reasons, partially for like sustainability reasons, I kind of wonder if deep ocean minerals are like when they dredge the seafloor to pick up all the fish, and they have a bunch of like gunky mud that's mixed in with the fish, and they're just like, oh, we can use this gunky mud. We'll sell it as deep ocean minerals. And in a way, that's kind of what it is, because like the base level of the seafloor, isn't that like just centuries of like rotted dead fish that have all like sunk to the bottom and decomposed with the various things that live down there nibbling on them over time? I'm excited to try this, Naomi. I can't hold off any longer. Tastes like grape juice.
Damn.
It's sparkling. It's very light and effervescent. For 130 calories, I was kind of hoping they would have a little more flavor than what it has, but it's fine. If my skin is glowing tomorrow, I might purchase it again. But the bottle's really cool. I don't know if you can tell. It's like a solid glass bottle. Feels kind of like a hand grenade. It's something you
What
could
is
chuck
that?
at someone and do some damage.
There's the water that looks like that. It's like the Sedona Springs water or something. You know what I'm talking about? It has the
Sure,
same
why not?
shape. Yeah.
Just
That's
like
what that reminds
Fiji,
me of.
there's someone who's bottling all the Arizona water and shipping it abroad, and they're like, this has vortex energies imbued within it. We put
Probably, yeah.
deep ocean quartz crystals into this in order to
Yeah.
give you enhanced psychic powers. So here's what I'm thinking, Naomi.
Okay.
We've had a lot of life events happen the last couple of months. We have not
So
really
true.
gotten a chance to sit down and process them in any specific order. I can start if you'd like, or you can talk about some of the stuff that's been going on with you. But I was thinking about going into a little bit of detail about what's going on with my wedding. Insert air horn sound.
Whoa! Oh my God. Okay, so I'll start from the beginning because I have small stuff that I'll just fill in. So I finished my first year of my MPH program, which was super
Sorry,
exciting.
NPH, your Neil Patrick Harris program.
Yeah, I just basically walk around and act like a very straight white man in a TV show called How I Met Your Father, and I'm trying to figure out like the exact opposite. And then I am actually a very gay man in real life. No, my MPH, my Master's of Public Health, I'm halfway done with it. I have half a master's degree, which is freaking insane. And I am very excited because I met a great group of girls and men. And I am just super happy with my colleagues in this program, and my mind feels like it, my brain feels like it has grown 3 sizes, kind of like the Grinch, but like my brain, and I love everything about it. So that's my first thing that I am that updating you guys on. I restart my program in September for my last 3 quarters. And yeah, I just feel very blessed that I had the opportunity to do this program in the first place because it's literally my dream school. Like UCSD is insane that I'm going there. So super exciting. Joel, give me your first update.
So life updates. I've never really gone into detail about what I do for work on this podcast, and that's for a specific reason. I won't go. This won't be the episode where I spill the beans on everything. But one exciting thing is I may no longer be doing my current job in the next couple of weeks, and instead
Woo!
transitioning to be a union representative who represents my workplace. And if you haven't figured it out by now, we're a pretty pro-labor podcast over here at Date These Guys. We have some crazy beliefs that, workers should have, safe working conditions where they can go home with all their fingers at the end of the day. We believe that workers should be entitled to, water when they are working in extreme heat, or most of the time, frankly. Water is one of those things that's just nice to have around. We're of the belief that, no one should have to experience sexual harassment in the workplace. We just have some crazy ideas about, how things should be conducted. So I don't know. I'm excited. I've been working as part of this group for a couple of years now. I have not led the group, obviously. And so this is like kind of a step up. But basically, I would be spending all my time just working on business that's germane to employees' needs. Working on things that involve making sure they have healthy, happy work conditions, that everyone's being treated fairly, and then at some point, negotiating with the group that I represent to see if we can get additional benefits, additional pay, and whatnot. So that's the very vague top level version of it, but it's something that I'm very passionate about. I think having discussed dating and relationships and all that jazz for the last couple of years. I'm ready for a new podcast, Naomi. I'm ready for a pro labor podcast.
I would love to do a pro labor podcast. I did hear something recently because Amazon Day was just like it was like last month, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I read an article that talked about like half of all Amazon workers are injured in some capacity on Amazon Day.
Wow.
And you have to think about how big of a company Amazon is. 50% of all workers are injured in some way on Amazon. That's insane. That's literally insane to me.
Yeah, it's like the meatpacking industry. Amazon's gotten to this point where like they've pretty much hired and or fired everybody who's like eligible to work for their warehouses. And so, there are areas where they've had to up the pay because they just can't get anybody in the door. Or alternatively, that they've had to start, bringing in people from outside that area to work in the warehouse because they've fired so many people working for them. And to be clear, like when I say that they were fired, it's not, oh, that employee was, stealing from Amazon. It's that employee was not making the level of order sorts that they were supposed to in an hour period. And that's based off of crazy algorithms and AI generated stuff that's like, oh, employees should be able to stuff 1,000 packages every minute, just completely ridiculous goals that continue to go up and up. And so people are practically sprinting across warehouses, dodging machinery moving around them to fill orders and put the packages in place. So yeah, I wish nothing but harm to the company that is Amazon. It was interesting this week as we're recording because a judge issued a decision that basically declared Google a monopoly and said that, there need to be some changes made because Google dominates the search industry, which violates a number of, United States laws. And I wonder if that is the start of additional legislation cracking down on monopolies and the damage they do to our everyday lives. Yeah. It's something I'm passionate about. It's something that I'd love to, explore more deeply. But, there's actually 2 other podcast ideas that I think I'd want to do first. Maybe this is the time to market test them, Naomi. Should I go into detail?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we're just making this episode up as we go along. I am so sorry, dear listeners. We'll provide a description in the episode summary, so you don't like turn this on and think to yourself, "Oh God, like I've wasted my life listening to these yahoos." You will have the choice to listen to these yahoos. Okay, so Naomi, I've had a couple of ideas for podcasts. I've had more than this, but like these are the only 2 I've spent like any amount of time like actually engaging with. So I'm going to give you the serious one first, and then the fun, whimsical one second.
Okay.
So I come from a sustainability background, and I think a big problem in sustainability communication is that it is so much easier to imagine dystopias than it is utopias. Pretty much any movie you see where there's a depiction of the future, it's always, oh, the robots have taken over and destroyed us all, or climate change has wiped out humanity, or there is some giant world war that, caused the apocalypse, and now, we're picking up among the ruins, right? It is so much easier to imagine a civilization that's been destroyed and not one that's been, like, retrofitted and changed so that we can continue to survive and thrive far into the future. So what I kind of want to put together, and this is like an idea that I've played with for a while and not one that like I have a lot of working knowledge of, so I definitely need to do some research into this, is a podcast series called Utopos. And you read Thomas More's Utopia when you were in school, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So author Thomas More back in 14th, 16th century, I don't know, it doesn't matter, it's all the same. Clearly shows the depth of my intellectual knowledge. Wrote a book called Utopia, where he describes what like his vision of the ideal society is. But the opening of the book refers to this place as utopos, or no place, from the Greek. Basically, a ideal society cannot exist in our world. It's not a like society that is possible to achieve due to the circumstances we're born into. So this podcast series will be called Utopos, which I think is just the coolest sounding name ever. And it's basically every episode you go one by one and explore different visions of utopia and the trade-offs that come with adopting the ideas of utopian living that different authors, different philosophers, different people have proposed that we should move to as a society. So there's, some groups who are like, we need to all live on like islands in the middle of the ocean. And there's some people who are like, we need to, invest heavily in space travel and go live on Mars. And there's some groups like, I think the Venus Foundation, which talks all about how the problem with society is we don't have enough stuff. We're always fighting over limited resources. So we need to maximize resource production in order to build towards a future where no one ever has to live in want. And so all of these are like radical ideas for how we change society from where we are now and, start tackling some of the big problems of our age. But I think it's worth having all of them compiled in one place, like a podcast series, so that people who are fascinated with the idea of like the world changing, but not sure what it can look like, have, reference points to go off of. And not all of it has to be fictional, too. Because I think often when people think about utopias, the things that they want are actually pretty basic. Right? It's like, I wish there was a coffee shop right down the street from my house. I wish I didn't live, 3 miles from the nearest shopping center. I wish that, I had clean water in my house, which unfortunately is not something that everyone in the United States or around the world has. I wish that, I had a job that, didn't overwork me, that was, maybe 3 days a week rather than 4 or 5 or 6. It's very basic things. It's just that the way we've structured things, the way we've created our system, those things are seemingly always out of reach. And so I think it'd be worthwhile to look at countries around the world and cities around the world that have radically changed, like their infrastructure and, their laws in order to accommodate the needs of people and make a more civil, affirming society for the average participant. And, a good place, a good example that I think has come up in the news recently is Paris, which in the last decade has radically changed how it approaches pedestrian travel around the city. It's stripped out car access to large chunks of the city. It's invested heavily in pedestrian corridors. It's invested heavily in expanding its public transportation lines. I think both the subways and the bus networks. And it just hosted this Olympics where it was like, look at us, we're so cool. We have, all these amazing things going on. And now Los Angeles has the Olympics in 2028, and it's a city that is much larger than Paris, much more spread out than Paris, and has significantly fewer resources than Paris for things like public transportation and, making a nice, walkable, livable city. So it's going to be a fascinating contrast of the experiences of people from around the world going from one to another. So yeah, that's the first idea for my podcast, Utopos. It's a series exploring visions of utopia and, the drawbacks and the benefits of adopting some of the whackadoodle, nonsensical ideas that people have about, how we can improve our world.
I think you and I talked about this when I was in Phoenix for dinner last week, but it was basically just, oh my God, that was this week. No, that was last week. My sense of time is gone. When we were talking about how like there's these beautiful backgrounds in Paris, like of the volleyball courts when they put on the volleyball games, and it's overlooking the Eiffel Tower, and the difference between that and the LA Olympics where like the triathletes will be running past a McDonald's and a Walmart.
Yeah.
Like that is just so fucking funny to me. We don't have any history in LA except for what, like the La Brea Tar Pits. Like that's the only thing that I can think of that's like cool to show off, What is there cool to show off in LA?
I mean, there's a lot of like historical buildings. So by that, I mean like 200 years old at most, probably 150 if you're thinking about some of the older stuff. I think for Los Angeles, the unfortunate reality is so much of the history of the city involves like race riots and like people overcoming oppression, not necessarily, everything was fine and dandy from the start. No problems here. Definitely didn't kick off a bunch of Spanish and Native American peoples from this area in order to build this city up. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating, especially because you have, in Paris, I'm not going to pretend Paris is a perfect city by any means. I'm not going to pretend France is a perfect country by any means, but, for the most part, it projects outwardly this, very, very strong positive message to people who are interested in visiting. Los Angeles doesn't really have that. Los Angeles has smog, it has air pollution, it has water pollution, it has, crime. I don't want to overstate that, but it's definitely a thing that exists. It has rampant homelessness because the state has insanely underinvested in public housing programs. Yeah, unfortunately, this has been something that people of Los Angeles have talked about for years, ever since Los Angeles won the 2028 games in a bid. And they're like, look, unfortunately, what the city's going to do is invest in like bulldozers to kick homeless people off the streets rather than like investing in public housing to solve the problem, right? They're going to like do that landlord thing where they like paint over a crummy house rather than like fixing any of the problems and hope for the best. And yeah, it's just not sustainable long term.
That's literally all of the US. I was literally just thinking, like, Gavin Newsom just signed that thing into law that's like, oh, yeah, the police can just get rid of all of the homeless encampments everywhere in California, in the state of California. And I just realized why. Because eyes are on California right now because the next Olympics is there. And I just realized he's thinking in the next 5 years. He's not just thinking in the next year or two. God, that they just put those
Uh,
things together.
I think you're right, but I think there's a more insidious element to that. California politics is interesting because, like, in terms of like a lot of laws, they're socially progressive but kind of economically regressive. I'm not going to like do a blanket statement. There's definitely pockets of, very, very progressive and very conservative parts all across the state. But then you look at like the laws that are passed by the legislature, and a lot of them are like insanely pro business and reactionary stuff. And I think the problem is that California politics is represented by people who primarily hobnob with millionaires and billionaires. And so their interests are aligned very heavily with those people rather than, the tens of millions of people who make, minimum wage who live in the state, who ultimately have to end up voting for them. And so one of the problems we've seen in cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco is that these mayors are saying, let's, clean up homelessness. Let's, eradicate it once and for all. Really cool, like Nazi subhuman rhetoric about, how homeless people are parasites. Not at all objectionable stuff. And the reason they're doing that is because they think that's going to help them in either the eyes of these people at the state level, or in the case of people like Gavin Newsom, getting fundraising for when he eventually runs for president. And that's deeply frustrating and reason 1 million on the list of reasons that, you should not have this much money in politics. This idea that, in order to win the favor of, the most wealthy parts of our country, you have to do reprehensible stuff. And then they'll, somewhere down the line reward you for your actions. I mean, I think genuinely, like, Gavin Newsom probably doesn't give a shit about homeless people. I don't think, that's some part of his, like, character that he's covering up. He doesn't seem like the nicest of individuals. During COVID, he was out partying at restaurants during lockdowns and was reportedly, caught numerous times doing this with friends and family. He's not someone who's, like, looking out for the public good or, like, the public as the same value as he and his people. But simultaneously, I think he's, someone who makes decisions based off of, where the funding's going to come from. And if a millionaire calls him up and says, hey, we gotta eradicate this, pestilence that's filled my street, he's more than happy to turn the fire hoses on. It's a really disgusting way of like doing politics, but it's unfortunately the way that like politics has developed in certain parts of the country. And it's something that I'd love to see change.
Changing the subject, let's just get back into, our update.
That was an
Um,
update.
what else?
Naomi, I'm now going to destroy California. That is my new mission in life.
Okay, okay. What else has been going on with me? Joel, give me.
You
Uh,
moved.
oh my God, I did move. No, I was going to talk about the Pickle Guys. So, so I did move. I moved in with my friend Sasha and my boyfriend Len. They've known each other since high school, so it's just like super fun. All of us are little besties, and we just rot on the couch every night. It's amazing since we moved in because we're just all so tired. Um, and it's amazing. It's so much fun. We have really great light in my apartment, so we have like really good like sunset views. And I'm so happy about that. And yeah, just good vibes, good breeze because we're on the fourth floor. Good breeze coming through. It's really nice. So yeah, that's my moving update. I would like to say, just so people aren't, sitting at the edge of their seat until I give this update, the Pickle Guys update. I went to New York and I was like, one of the things that I definitely want to do is I want to go to this place called the Pickle Guys. And the Pickle Guys is basically just a bunch of like giant barrels of pickles that are different types of pickles that you can customize the brine for. So they have a half sour, they have a quarter sour, they have an extra sour, they have onions and pickled onions and pickled like the small bulb like
Yeah,
white
yeah.
onions, and they also have the red onions. They have pickled pepperoncinis. They have literally everything you can think of pickled, and they have them in these giant barrels in this storefront. So I was like, one of the things that I have to do on there is go get a pickle there. But then I found out that they're willing to wrap these like containers for you in a bunch of saran wrap, which is extremely wasteful, but I had to bring some home with me. And so you can get 11 pickles, different pickles with customized brine, and it was one of the best purchases I've ever made in my life.
You didn't have to throw
And
them
it
out the
was a
airport, right?
great No, I didn't. It was amazing because ended up checking my bag. So I got like 11 pickles in a jar, saran wrapped, and then put into a plastic bag. And they didn't leak at all. It was amazing. And then I brought them home because I had one. Actually, at one point during the day, I was carrying, let's see, 22, 24 pickles with me in a bag because we had two spares that were just, sliding around in the bag because we just wanted to have a pickle. And it was amazing. And if you ever go to New York, go to the Pickle Guys, but also they have a website. This is not sponsored, I swear to God. But I'm just giving them free advertisement time because I literally you need to go there and get their extra sour spicy pickles. They do ship everywhere in the United States. So that's a great Christmas present, guys. Go do that.
Naomi, I gotta ask. I know you had to miss a day in New York due to travel drama, but what you've said is I went to a Green Day concert, I went to the Sex in the City house, I went to the friend's house, and I got pickles. Was there anything else that you wanted to do or that you did do that you haven't mentioned yet?
So we actually did something crazy, and we thought that our days were going to be a little bit more restful, but instead we just kind of just went hard for 2 days. So on the first day, we did bagels, of course, because it's a New York experience. We did bagels, and then we walked to the Empire State Building because we were staying in Times
Sorry,
Square.
I'm just picturing
And
that
so
scene
we
from
could
The
literally
Office where Michael Scott goes to New York and he's like, "Oh, I got to get a slice of that New York authentic crust," and he goes to Barrows.
yeah.
So you just went to Einstein
No,
Bagels,
we went
right?
to No, no. I did get Einstein's the day before I left San Diego though. But no, I went to this place. There's just general rule that I live by that like when you're in a major city, when something is called the best, like let's just use bagels as an example, the best bagels and coffee, um, it's either really fucking horrendous or it's really fucking good. And so the closest bagel place to us was called the best bagels and coffee, and so or best bagels and lattes. And so we ended up going there and they had really good bagels. So that's a rule I live by, and I will continue living by that rule because it has yet to fail me. So we did bagels, and then we went to the Empire State Building. We took a funny picture in front of it, touched it, and then we dipped out. We went to we went to Radio City Music Hall, took a picture in front of that. We went to NBC Studios, which is where they film like Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, Saturday Night Live. We went and just walked around the gift store because Bianca's family or her little sister is really into Jimmy Fallon.
Ugh.
I think one of the Jimmys she's into. She's not into them, but like she really loves his content. And I ended up getting a like Saturday Night Live mug, and I was like, "Oh, this is so great!" Because I love Saturday Night Live. It's so great. And then what else did we do after that? And then we went to Central Park. We went to the Met, We didn't go like and see any of the exhibits. Again, we just went to the gift shop. At this point, Bianca at the Met, she bought her fourth tote bag of the day. Keep in mind, each of these tote bags were probably like $45 each. So she had just spent like $200 in about 4 hours on tote bags, which was pretty insane. And then from there, we walked around Central Park a little bit, saw the boathouse. Then we went and got lunch at Gordon Ramsay's Fish and Chips, which was one of Bianca's requests because she really enjoys Gordon Ramsay's food, which was interesting because it was more of like a fast food restaurant in the sense that it was like you ordered and then you you ordered at the counter and then sat down, but everything was made to
Yeah, yeah.
order. So you ordered like your shrimp and then they battered it and then they like put it
Shrimp is
like in
neither
the
a
fryer.
fish nor a chip. I just want to throw that out there.
No, I know. But they did shrimp and fish and chips like together. And that was like their combo meal.
Ah, the turf and turf.
No, I
surf
give
and
it
surf.
I'm not the surf and turf. But no, it was like I'm not the biggest fan of fish and chips because it's like super heavy, but like I'd give it like a 6 out of 10. It wasn't the best experience, but it wasn't. Yeah, whatever. And then we went back to the hotel, took a nap, got a beer out of the bar next door to us because they had 7 signs that said pub this way or like bar this way.
They had 7
or,
signs
like,
that said the best beer in New York City.
No, but it was one of those situations where we were like, "Huh, I wonder if that's a bar," just like fucking around. But yeah, we ended up going, sat on the rooftop there. We also realized that no one in that city laughs or smiles. So we definitely looked like tourists because we were just giggling the entire time. And we realized it's because one, the way that New York City works is the buildings are so close together that no light no sunlight, you have no direct sunlight until the sun is directly overhead. And the second part of that is that no one looks at sunsets. It's very interesting. Everyone on the West Coast, they like stop, they like look at the sunset, they're like, wow, it's so pretty. Maybe they take a picture. No one looks at the sunsets. And I was like, that says a lot about you. Um, then after we got a beer, we went to the New York Public Library, which Bianca really wanted to go to, and she really wanted to see the actual books, but everyone was just there for the architecture, and they don't let you in unless you're studying and you can prove you're a student or like a professor or something. It's very interesting. So you can go and walk around and see the architecture, but you can't see the actual books, and you can't go into the study rooms unless you like have that proof, which is I found interesting. And then we went to Queens. So we went from the first stop on the subway to the very last stop on the subway, and that was a hell of a time because it was like super humid, super hot. It was like 88 degrees with 72% humidity while we were there. Yeah, it was disgusting. I got my 99-cent pizza before we went to the concert.
Best pizza
and then
in New York
we
City.
saw best pizza in New York City. And then we went back to the hotel, and after the Green Day concert was so good. It was so good. And then the next day we woke up and we had to finish our list. So what did we start off with? We went to like a Parisian cafe, which was awful. And then it wasn't because it was Parisian, it was because the food was just awful. And then we went to
Did it have a big sign that said
Statue of Liberty?
Worst Parisian food in New York City?
No, it was right off of Bryant Park, and it was supposed to be traditional Parisian food, but we got sandwiches so we could like eat half of them for breakfast, and because they were like big sandwiches, half of them for breakfast and then half of them for lunch. And so we got it was like a manchego prosciutto sandwich, and I was like, that sounds really good because it had arugula on it. But then I started eating it and it just tasted like a mustard sandwich. Like if you were to tell me there was anything on there, I would not believe you. Even if I opened up the sandwich and saw it, I still wouldn't believe you that anything other than mustard was on that sandwich. And they didn't toast the baguette, so it was just it was that weird hard but also not good, but whatever. And then we went to go see the Statue of Liberty, and then we went to Brooklyn and saw the Brooklyn Bridge, like the Dumbo area. And then we went to, what else do we do? Then we went to Chinatown and had a very uncomfortable lunch at a Chinese restaurant because they didn't want us there. They just stared at us the entire time. There was like 6 other groups of people in there and they just stared at us the entire time. And then we left and we went to the Pickle Guys, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And then from the Pickle Guys, we went to the friend's apartment, Carrie Bradshaw's apartment. And then we went to this cute little happy hour because we had some extra time before we headed to the airport, and then spent $150 to get to Newark Airport from Times Square. Yeah, because it started raining and we walked through Times Square. And it's the most interesting thing. I've never had this happen before. The entire sky got dark and it started pouring rain. It was like, it looked like it was the middle of the night, but it was like 4:30 in the afternoon. It looked apocalyptic. Like it was scary. And then my adventures from there. So I in total had 5 canceled flights and 6 delays. So don't fuck with me, bro. Like I've been through it all at this point.
Damn.
Yeah. So that was my whole adventure. We saw a lot, honestly. We walked like 15 miles the first day and 10 the next. So we basically walked everywhere.
Yeah. I was thinking, when a friend of the show, RJ, went to Germany, he snapped a bunch of photos in prominent locations around Berlin, similar to how you did this apparently in New York. At least one of these needs to be the cover for our podcast, by the way. But every single one of them was him like staring intently at the Reichstag with the caption, "Keeping watch at the Reichstag in case old man Hitler's up to his tricks," and going to the Brandenburg Gate and squatting down and being like, "Sorry, Brandenburg, you knew I gotta do it to him." So just like outdated
God.
memes and references that, like, for someone who grew up in 2010 on the internet probably made a lot more sense. But every single one I saw, I got a good chuckle out of. Longtime listeners of the show will note this is the same trip I was supposed to be on with RJ, and I was supposed to be in Berlin with him. But similarly to Naomi, I couldn't get over to Europe. I had a series of comical delays, which eventually ended with me flying from Portland to Hawaii to Denver to New York to Greece so that I could resume partly through the multi-leg trip.
I thought you were in Seattle.
Oh, yeah,
originally.
I always mix those up. I can't remember. Seattle, you're right. It was Seattle. If I was in Portland, I would have gotten a voodoo donut. Yeah.
So true. Yeah, so we've both had pretty bad flight stories now.
Hey,
that's like crazy.
It's true. I know our brother, was traveling in Europe a couple of years ago, and the only real issues he ran into was there was a garbage strike in Paris when he was in France. But, that's like a weekly occurrence. It's not a big deal. Naomi, I'm going to interrupt you because I realized you interrupted me and I never got to explain my second podcast idea. And this is the greatest idea. This is the one that our listeners are going to go to bat for me for. Naomi, are you familiar with the TV series Suits?
Yes, I'm very familiar. Very, very familiar. I love that show.
Excellent. So Suits blew up like either last summer or the summer before because it finally got on Netflix. And for those who aren't aware, it's this 8-season series about high-profile lawyers.
I think it's 9.
Oh God, in New York City, mostly shot in Vancouver, who handle all sorts of crazy cases and have all sorts of behind-the-scenes legal drama. I guess one of the main premises of the show is that one of the main characters isn't actually a lawyer, but is pretending to be a lawyer, and who's going to find out that he's not actually a lawyer?
Yeah, he has like a photographic memory and he's like super clever and like on his feet, like acts really well on his feet. And so he got hired. And so his boss, the one that hired him, is the only one that knows that he didn't actually go to law school. But if they put the bar exam in front of him, he'd ace it. So like his boss wasn't really worried about anyone finding out he wasn't a lawyer.
Sure. So I've never actually seen an episode of the show, except YouTube decided that it should keep recommending me clips of the show. And over time, I've kind of absorbed through osmosis, like the major plot lines and the characters and the drama and all that stuff. So I don't like the show. it's one of those like Marvel movie shows where like everyone's just the quippiest, coolest person at all times in all scenes, and like everyone's irrationally angry at one another to like create artificial drama, and no one has a real conversation, and most conversations are just kind of someone slapping down a folder on a desk and saying, "I've got all you need right here," and then cutting to like 10 hours later when they're in court and they're presenting it, a person opens it up and it's like, "Oh my god, the evidence we need for this." Yeah, it's all ridiculous. And having spent a lot of time with, my wife, who's an attorney, I get the impression that like it's misleading a lot of people about like the field of law and what you can actually expect as a lawyer. And also like making it seem really neat and awesome to be this lawyer who defends like terrible clients and does terrible stuff. And to be clear, I'm not saying that you can't enjoy TV series about like awful people. I think, Always Sunny in Philadelphia is a good example of like people who are consistently depicted as like awful human beings, and it's an enjoyable TV series. The difference between the two is like no one's looking at those people as role models. No one's looking to those people and is like, oh, that's how the world actually operates. And it feels that like Suits was created to make the field of corporate law seem as sexy and cool, as appealing as possible, and draw people into that. So what I want to do, Naomi, is a podcast series where we rewatch, or watch for the first time in my instance, the series Suits, episode after episode. And every episode, we're going to dig into the problems being depicted by this show, the mistakes they're making as lawyers, because I've read on Reddit that they, frequently the show depicts like law in like this completely horrendous way that completely misrepresents how you're supposed to handle certain situations. And we dig into how this is influencing people's perceptions of being a terrible person at the highest levels of power. But the kicker, Naomi, even if that sounds kind of boring, is the name. We call it Who Gives a Suit. And every episode is us just being like, this episode sucks. Who gives a suit about this show? And you can either be like, who gives a hoot or who gives a shit? But like either way, it's a very clever play on words, and I need you to applaud right now so I feel like I'm clever thank you for coming up with it. But I think that would be enough to get us to like 10,000 subscribers the first week.
I think it's a great show idea, but I think what would make it even better is if it was just you and Lauren doing this show. It wasn't you and me, because it would have, the civilian sort of aspect of it, but also the lawyer aspect where she's like, they can't fucking do that. And like, it would just be so much funnier if she just poked holes in all of the plots. I also can't sit through another episode of Louis Litt, who is one of the main characters, yelling, because he literally looks like if a chipmunk and a turtle had a baby and had extra teeth. Like he talks like this, and I just can't get over it because he's so ugly and he spits all the time, and it's just I can't do it.
Yeah. I have spoken to Lauren about this, and she has adamantly refused, so I need to make more lawyer friends.
Damn.
Yeah.
Damn.
Listeners, that's not a knock against my wife. That is me saying how smart she is for not committing to a 9-season TV show.
That's very fair. Yeah. Is it like we like start new, like we take a break in between each season? So we have like a month off break in between each season, and then we go on to the next one? Because it's kind of like, how like seasons of shows, they take like a year between them to like film them. Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, I've listened to a couple of rewatch podcasts. The Pod Yourself a Gun and then Pod Yourself a Wire series, which went over the Sopranos series and then the Wire series. And both of those, had a very long hiatus between the seasons as well as the show breaks themselves. And it's interesting because typically they can fill that time either with, behind the scenes stuff or like interviewing people about, some of the creative decisions that were made. So yeah, it can be fun. I don't know, like, I'd say this, kind of comically, it is something that, I've given some thought to, not something I'm serious about. I do genuinely think there's kind of a problem in our culture where like so much content is being created about content. And like, I personally would find it much more rewarding to create new content, new perspectives on things, rather than, just constantly being like, oh, what did David Chase mean in this scene of The Wire? Because, like, I'm sure there's already, like, a bajillion Suits podcasts out there, and I'm sure there's a bajillion, podcasts for any TV show you can think of. The Golden Girls rewatch hour or whatever. And yeah, I wish there was, more opportunities to see new content, explore new content, whether that's, like a radio drama or, genuinely just, hard hitting reporting or something in the podcast medium.
I don't know. I totally agree with you because I feel like now everybody like makes content on content. Like it's the same like on when you're content creators, you just follow the trends,
Mm-hmm.
you're not really coming up with anything original. So, I guess that's a really good
I
perspective.
think
But
look like my issue
um
is not inherently that like content on content is bad, because I just admitted I've listened to a lot of it and found it enjoyable, kind of learning more about like behind the scenes and like creator intent and different perspectives on stuff. I have like newfound respect for The Wire after listening to this rewatch and kind of listening to how certain themes were developed, and the audience might not have noticed it. I think the problem I see is people enjoy media and they want to feel as though that media is valuable and that they didn't waste their time consuming it. And so frequently they'll seek out creators who affirm that and are like, did you know that How I Met Your Mother is actually smarter than you thought? And like they'll do these, long-winded rants about, the themes of How I Met Your Mother and how they set up jokes, 6 seasons early. And then if someone's like, oh, you like How I Met Your Mother? I didn't like that show. You'd be like, no, actually it's really smart and intelligent. It's like, look, enjoy what you want to enjoy, right? If someone's going to give you crap for enjoying something, you don't need to be friends with that person, right? You don't need to engage with this stuff in order to feel better about your media choices. Most people consume some form of trash, right? Our brains are hardwired to enjoy that kind of thing. Don't feel bad about it. I also think, there's a lot of value in like listening to other people talk about the media you enjoy, because it can help you better understand, why you enjoy it. And I think that's interesting. People giving fan theories, people giving additional context, people sharing like their own personal takes. It's nice having that, sort of community. But simultaneously, I see so much on YouTube and so much in my podcast feeds from people who are just like talking about talking. And, they're talking about the new Jake Paul incident, or they're talking about the new, Penguin Zero thing. And it's like, I don't care. I don't care. This is something that means nothing to me. I've lost your audio, Naomi.
I think that we should sit down and talk about your wedding. I'm so sorry to interrupt your content, but I've been sitting on the edge of my seat for 51 minutes now, ready to discuss your wedding.
Oh, damn. Yep, not much to talk about. Glad you showed up, guys. Bye for now. Let's talk about it. Okay, so we have a ceremony planned for December. We are pretty good in terms of, getting things together. We have, a firm outline. We need to sit down with our officiant, friend of the show, Giselle, in order to kind of discuss the ceremony structure, but we're far ahead of where we need to be. We have all of our invitations out. We have all of our directories in place. It's pretty good. First thing I'll say, Naomi, is don't ever have a wedding. Weddings are expensive. Weddings get out of control really fast. I knew this when I, dipped my toes into this, and, it's not like the end of the world. I recognize it's hopefully once in a lifetime experience that, you don't have to repeat over and over again. And, I'm happy to bring friends in and share a special occasion with them. But genuinely, like, I don't think a big ceremony at a fancy venue is going to be appropriate for the majority of relationships. I think you can affirm your love at a rental Airbnb somewhere on the beach. I think you can affirm your love at a park nearby and spend a bunch of money on barbecue and baked beans and have a lovely feast with your friends and family. Yeah, weddings are very much part of this like cultural thing where, like, in order to indicate that you've made it, that you're successful, you have to throw this, giant elaborate bash. And I think the majority of stuff at the wedding is unnecessary. But as you purchase a venue, you begin to see, oh, well, it's going to look tacky if I don't have X, Y, and Z. And that's where the costs begin to mount up, right? You're never just purchasing a venue. You're purchasing a space that then needs to be filled with stuff, right? And we're talking...
Can you...
Go ahead.
Yeah, can you give an example of what you're talking about that would make it like less or make it more tacky if you didn't have it?
So we have this lovely venue. It's this weird converted old greenhouse property. So there's a greenhouse that they've converted into a dining space. It is heated in winter and cooled in summer, and they have a bunch of beautiful tables set up in between the plants. It's very cool. Outdoors, they have this kind of like Italian via vibe. It's like all stone and arches and whatnot, and that's where the ceremony will be taking place. But there's a lot of gaps. There's a lot of like spaces that like there's nothing going on. And so, we're purchasing flowers, we're purchasing accessories, we're purchasing like what are they called? The 3-panel room dividers. You know what I'm talking about? Okay,
I have no idea what you're talking about.
we've purchased some easels and whatnot to put up artwork and put up pictures of us and put up well wishing stands and all sorts of things. Yeah. There are things we want to put on the tables because the tables are a little bit bare, and I don't know if this is the venue falling short in some areas or if it's us kind of overthinking it. But yeah, I think the expectations are set at a certain point when you have the venue. Oh well, you've gone above and beyond in the area of renting the space. Now we expect just mentally you to add on some accoutrements and other stuff on the periphery. I've seen some people who are like, I want my guests to be happy. Here's a gift for all of my guests. Here's a bagel from a place we like nearby for breakfast tomorrow. Here's a late night snack or whatever. We're not doing any of that. But I think just the general idea is there are certain social expectations about how you present yourself among your peers. And at the point where you've invested in a venue, there comes a lot of baggage associated with that, where you need to continue kind of stepping up and escalating in order to make people feel comfortable. Look, I am not sitting here being like, I feel social pressure to do this stuff. I'm more than happy to, make the space look nice and vibrant. I want to have, nice photos and videos of this day to look back on and not be like, why did we not do anything with that ugly vent sitting in the corner of the picture there? But yeah, it kind of just comes with the territory. I would suggest, as much as possible, stick with the smallest possible version of your ceremony. Think about it in terms of like the most cheap form of what it means to commit your love to one another. And that's then where you can start building it out. Okay, maybe we want a flower arch. Maybe we want, catering from our favorite restaurant for 150 people. Maybe we want a bouncy castle because we met in an amusement park. I don't know, right? There are all sorts of things you can add on in addition rather than kind of being like obligated into, if that makes sense. For people who are trying to arrange a wedding, I'll say this: it is easier than ever before. There's so many websites and apps that make it like a one-stop shop for coordinating all the different aspects of the ceremony, all the vendors that you're going to need, whether or not, if purchase things like your wedding dress and your suit and your hairstylist and all that jazz. The Knot, for instance, has that ability. It also allows you to send out digital invites and keep track of all your guests, whether or not they've called in and, whether or not they've said, I want a fish or chicken or whatever your options are at the meal. You can also set up a directory through there. So you can, have a long list of gifts and things that you would appreciate around your house, and all of them have links so guests can like click on them and immediately go to buy them and send them directly to your house. So it's much simpler than having to send out a list to people, or however people did it in the past. I don't fully understand. Yeah, I would strongly recommend those resources because they're out there. A lot of them are free. Some of them, require you to make an account. But beyond that, like, they're going to be making money off of you just by merit of like click-throughs. One of your guests says, I'll buy them the vacuum cleaner, and they click on that link. The Knot's going to get their share of the pie. So unfortunately, you are a product as someone who is having a wedding, and lots of people can make money off of you. And that's really not the end of the world. Other stuff. If you are interested in writing vows, there are certain programs you can use. I am strongly opposed to AI programs, but there are pre-AI apps that help with that. So like Providence is an app that allows you to submit kind of the themes you want to touch upon in vows or like wedding speeches, and it'll generate scripts based off of that, based off of kind of like Mad Libs, right? Where it takes the themes and like kind of inserts them into pre-written speeches that you can then play with. I have not used that, but I've seen kind of the stuff that it generates, and it's pretty good. I don't think you need to overthink vows. I think vows should be personal to you and your partner, but simultaneously, I think a lot of the same stuff is going to be talked about: trust, commitment, fidelity, love you forever and ever, many kisses, mucho gusto, right? Like there's not going to be a lot of differentiation between all of that. The one thing that was very important to me, Naomi, when working on the wedding was food, because I've been to a lot of weddings that like go to the nines in every area but the food. And to be clear, I think you can have a really enjoyable experience getting some baked beans and a bunch of Frito chips, right? I'm not someone who's expecting, top tier choices. It's just that like a lot of venues will have like buffets or whatever, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, we got Spanish rice," and it's like the blandest, most poorly cooked rice you've ever tasted, and mixed vegetables, and it's like the soggiest, blandest squash you've ever tasted, and a dessert, and it's the soggiest, blandest ice cream you've ever tasted. Yeah, like a lot of these venues are not going to deliver you phenomenal food. You really have to like pay attention to the sorts of things they serve, and or go to a tasting, and or hire an outside caterer. So Lauren and I went to a meal tasting a couple of weeks ago and had approximately 3 meals worth of food in the space of an hour. They kept bringing out like appetizers and mains for us to sample, not full portions of anything, but like a huge amount of food compressed into a very short period of time. I think we both went home and napped for 2 hours afterwards. But it was worth it. We've come up with a menu that I think reflects kind of our individual tastes. It's kind of a Southwestern themed thing that has both vegetarian and vegan options that don't suck. I've been served enough portobello mushrooms with lentils in my life as a vegetarian that I would like to give our people options that are not that. And we will have, vegetarians and vegans at our ceremony. It's, Southwestern, so it's similar to, our backgrounds, at least spending lots of time in the United States, in Arizona specifically. And it's, flavors that we enjoy. But then also we have custom drinks at the venue. So she's doing like a blackberry bramble with gin, and I'm doing a non-alcoholic cucumber drink because I'm not a big fan of just drinking in general. And both of them are tasty, delicious drinks that I think are reflective of our personalities and our individual tastes that people can enjoy. And so, yeah, I think food is important to me. I don't know if it's important to everybody, but it's like really a way of transporting individuals. It's a way of helping people get inside your headspace. It's a way of sharing part of your like culture and your background with them. And far too many people are just like, okay, we spent $30,000 on the venue. Let's get, whatever the cheapest package is. And look, I'm not going to hate anybody who gives me like substandard food at a wedding. I appreciate you inviting me. But simultaneously, if so much of the experience is, the highest tier imaginable, and you're going to have all these lovely memories of that day, why would you like taint that by having that other memory, which is, oh, those were the blandest beans I've ever tasted, or those are like the worst Spanish rice dishes I've ever seen. Again, like this is unfortunately kind of the reality of, escalating your tier of wedding, where like this is just going to be a reality where like anytime you're at a nice place, anything that's not that same level of quality is going to stick out in the minds of people that you're like appealing to. And so it's a fool's game to try to win this battle. You're gonna spend a shitload of money on a nice wedding. Sorry, there's not really a clever way you can save money. Unfortunately, the wedding industry has done a very good job of like capitalizing on all the different aspects of the ceremonies and jacking up prices accordingly. I think the only way you can probably save money is stealing a lot of the stuff you need. And I don't know if I feel comfortable endorsing that on this podcast. Maybe on one of my other podcasts, or Who Gives a Suit or Utopos, we could have that conversation, but certainly not here at the Date These Guys official fan blog forum / podcast experience.
You bring up a lot of good points, and I'm glad that you're doing this before I have to do it, because I feel like if I were to have to do it first, I would not know where to start and what to do, and I wouldn't make a lot of good decisions. So I'm glad that you are going through this before me, so I can call you when I'm planning my wedding and being like, what do I do?
That's very fair. I am a little concerned, Naomi. Are you still thinking about at some point in the future getting married to Lynn, or are you committed to Green Day now?
I'm committed to Green Day full-heartedly. Actually, I was looking up, Billy Joe Armstrong is married, which like I knew about for a very long time. He's been married for at least 10 years.
People die.
And I was looking at his kids' names, and one of them is like, there's like, he has 2 sons, and one of them has like, it's like Billy Danger as his last name, and then like the other kid is just like Dan Armstrong. And I was like, why the fuck would you give one of your kids a fucking metal name, and the other kid is just like, Dan.
This is my son Dan. This is my son Danger. Oh, sorry, Danger.
Yeah, I was like, Danger. I was just like, why would you give one of your kids a metal name, and the other one is just like, this is Bill. This is Tom.
It feels like kind of a compromise you make in relationships, where it's like, okay, we can name one of our kids Danger, but I get to name the next one. Or maybe the wife named it Danger. I don't know. I'm not going to project gender norms on these
Maybe.
people.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, Naomi, this has been a fun time catching up with you, my sister, in the year of our Lord 2024, in a period of time that feels less like there's going to be an active fascist takeover of the United States.
Woo!
Like, I'm
Woo!
not saying it's going to happen. It just like feels a little less real than it did a couple weeks back. So
Yeah.
that's pretty good.
Yeah,
Big fan of
definitely.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I really love. I read this tweet recently. Sorry, is it still called a tweet? What is it called now? An X?
I'm not going to
That's like
engage
a
with
real
this.
question.
I genuinely have no
No,
idea.
just
I
answer my
don't
question.
know.
It's a genuine
Zeet?
question.
Zeet? A zit?
So I read this tweet recently that's talking about the difference between JD Vance and Tim Walz. And the main difference is that Tim Walz is the kind of guy that you run into at Home Depot and he like happily explains how to like build a birdhouse. And JD Vance is the guy that yells at the person behind the counter at Panera for more free lemonade. And I feel like that's like a really good understanding of like the differences between the two VP picks.
I'm confused. Is this part of the joke? But every Panera I've been in, the drink fountain is just open to people to like walk over and fill up with lemonade. You need a cup, but like I don't want to overthink this.
Just yeah, don't overthink it. Just let it happen.
Okay. And this is the lemonade that gives you heart attacks, right?
Yeah, what is that called? It's like the energy lemonade or something.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
All I know is that Panera was like, okay, we screwed up. We're pulling it from stores. Then they brought it back this summer and they're like, it only has half the caffeine. So you can drink all you want,
Yeah.
you gremlins.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyways, great catching up, Joel. It was great to talk to you. Everybody knows our tea now. Everybody knows how to plan a wedding correctly.
This is the only time
We
we
love
talk
you
all year
so
is these
much.
Catchup episodes.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true. We appreciate you all listening to our long rant about our lives, and we hope to see you back next week for another great episode.
Maybe actually about a
And
book this
yeah,
time.
woo! And yeah, we'll talk. We'll see you guys later. Much love.
Just as a bit of continuity, we will provide an update next week if my skin is glowing based of all the fish collagen I've apparently consumed
Ooh,
today.
yes,
Aqua Gin,
yes, we love that.
Italian style grape juice, guys. It's gonna change the world with all that crusty ocean mud. It's good for you.
Ew.
And with that, bye.